Welcome. My name's Jon Clay, VP of Threat Intelligence here at Trend Micro, and welcome to episode 11 of Trend Talks BizSec. Joining me again today is Ed Cabrera, Chief Cybersecurity Officer at Trend Micro. Ed, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Part two, my friend. I'm excited.
Yeah, so everybody, this is part two of our discussion around the global recession. Last time we talked about the impact on businesses and how the recession will impact them. I wore a hoodie today because today we're going to talk about how it impacts the cyber criminal elements and what it happens with the cyber criminals out there during a global recession. So this will be an exciting discussion and look forward to having it. Ed, so first thing we want to talk about is how will the global recession impact malicious actors' activities? What do we think?
I think it has the potential of affecting in many different ways, right? So any geopolitical or socioeconomic event creates opportunities when it comes to social engineering attacks, right? So we know anything that creates more opportunities to, trick individuals into clicking into malicious links or files and so forth. So that is a given, right? So an economic downturn or recession creates great opportunities there. And then there's the other things that we'll talk about is, does it create opportunities for other budding cyber criminals? And do we see a change in tactics or techniques? And I would say potentially. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening here, especially when we're talking not just a U.S. Recession, we're talking about a global recession.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting because, we've seen the threats just continued over and over, right? Last year over year, the threats increased. We up to like 95 billion last year we blocked for customers. This year, we're already on pace to be over 100 billion threats blocked for 2022. So it doesn't seem like the activity is going to stop. And like you said, Ed, I think the ability to use world news and events that happen in their attacks just increases. So, the pandemic allowed them to do a ton of phishing emails around the pandemic and, the stats and vaccines and all the other stuff. This is also going to just fuel that whole opportunity for them to just launch more and more attacks.
No, absolutely. And when we look at sort of the impact to emerging markets as opposed to just the U.S. and Europe and so forth, that they in a global recession, right? We're looking at two probably different options according to economists, right? They're either a soft landing or a hard landing, and also the duration of either one, right? Soft landing in a short duration, the impact back might be minimal from a cybercrime perspective, right? It might be a steady increase as it normally is. But if it's a harder impact and for a longer duration, this creates a lot of strain, right? Especially in these emerging markets and countries, and especially now with not only recession, but with inflation and in a high dollar value, which creates these countries that are facing paying back a lot of debt. It makes it harder for them to pay off that debt. So at the macro level, and then that's all of this trickles down to individuals working within those countries. And does that have that effect? Anecdotally, I say yes. I mean, we look back to 2008, the recession, the Great Recession started in July of 2008. That was, according to the Verizon data breach report, represented, I think, over 360,000 records compromised. It was a nice peak in a several year average or look of how many records being compromised. Now, that's not a one for one. That's just anecdotal, but I think these downturns have an impact for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing you mentioned there is the emerging markets and in the areas where a global recession is probably going to hit hardest. So Africa, for example, we see a ton of business email compromise coming out of Africa, and FBI recently put out an alert about that being even more financially driven than ransomware out there, right? More losses in BEC than ransomware. And that's where a lot of it's coming. And so if these Africans are struggling with regular jobs, we could definitely foresee them getting more and more cyber criminals into the industry. I mean, Think about that, Ed. What areas of the world do we probably see? Obviously, with Ukraine and Russia kind of getting off the grid, so to speak, because they're dealing with their war. There's probably a vacuum where the actor groups in other regions can pick it up, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's take, Ukraine and you take Russian speaking threat actors. Obviously, don't see them slowing down just because, if anything, possibly increase their efforts. But to your point, a lot of these groups, there's always the question of, patriotic hackers and or cyber mercenaries, and are any of these, prolific groups being taxed or being asked or feel obliged to, contribute to some cyber attack or cyber campaigns against Ukraine? And so that's sort of an unknown. What could that impact really be? Is it an impact or is it not? And so, but also you look at this creates opportunities that we talked about from other emerging markets. We've done research in the past with cyber criminal undergrounds and groups, and we always made note of Brazil and as one of those um, countries and regions where that they were making a lot of progress in cyber criminal undergrounds and creating opportunities, and elevating their game, so to speak, in their marketplace, right? What services were they providing? At one point, they were really getting into the market of doing training and almost cyber criminal certifications of services, right? There are really B2B training entities that were happening in Brazil to sort of elevate the cyber criminal skill set. Also, you have China. Let's talk about China. China, as an emerging cyber criminal, group where they really have been traditionally focused inwards. Does this and the economic challenges that China is facing now with further lockdowns and so forth, does that create a greater demand or need for those cyber criminal groups to conduct attacks outside of China, right? And then we already know about North Korea, right? And how they have really focused in on doing crypto, jacking it and or just outright stealing wallets as a way to fund their government. So with additional pressures on these governments that were already isolated to begin with, will they then step up their cyber criminal activities? It's unknown, but it's interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, it really is. And the other area that I see, Ed, is we've seen a lot of emphasis in the undergrounds about offering tools and toolkits. They're building automation into a lot of these toolkits. So these newbie actors that come in don't really have to really know the business and know they don't have to code. They don't have to be able to do a lot of things because the kits do it for them. I think that's one of the areas that we're going to see probably grow and improve over time here, that you're going to see a much more and bigger offering of these tools that basically an attack tool set that can do the entire attack for you as a cyber criminal. And that's certainly going to unfortunately drive more people into this industry and allow them to be successful in the industry faster than they've ever been before.
No, I think that's you have a great point, and I completely agree. Them almost, akin to what we see in social media channels, be it Instagram or otherwise, where you have all of these individuals advertising training for individuals to open up their own Amazon stores to make money and this and that or the other. And this is the best way to sort of get rich quick, trainings that you're going to have that similar type of outreach during times like this, because there's this thought process that there's going to be a bigger demand, and so why not create some supply and some training and kits that are end to end, or services that are end to end more than what they are now. So no, I completely agree.
Yeah, and one area that we have to caution organizations around is the recruitment of insiders. We're starting to see more and more of this happening where the ransomware gangs are recruiting insiders for initial access to the network or lateral movement across the organization. And certainly, as we know, in a global recession, there's going to be tightness in the organization. And so a lot of employees may become disgruntled or something, or cautious, or they want to make extra money. And certainly this is one area. Obviously, if they become a malicious insider and you get caught, that's a one-way track to maybe going to jail, which is good. That's an incentive not to do it. But that's another area that I think we're certainly seeing growth in the underground.
Yeah, we said it in the first episode of this little series, this two-part series, is it's a huge risk to companies and organizations right now, or as they go into a recession, right? And again, going back to, how hard is it and how prolonged is it, right? The longer it is, the greater the risk becomes as employees possibly will be, the morale is down, disgruntled, angry, and this and that or the other. So they're definitely possibly at a more vulnerable to be recruited, right? And so absolutely agree that the insider and the recruitment of insiders, we had to be very vigilant, right, within our organizations to sort of identify this early on and possibly, thwart it. And obviously, the one first thing is having good communications from executive leadership regarding, anything that's happening within the organization or company. So they, a lot of times the communication breaks down, and employees see this as they sort of read into the tea leaves, and sometimes it's not really something they should be concerned about, or this or that or the other. So no, this is a huge risk for companies and organizations going forward as insider threats individually and or being recruited.
Yeah, and you're getting into the area I wanted to finish up on, Ed, which is kind of, what are some recommendations we can give organizations? And certainly I think this is a good opportunity to look at people, process, and technology, right? The three areas of risk, and maybe putting in place some new ways to go about cybersecurity that can help improve themselves in the future, right? You just mentioned, right? It's kind of top-down approach, make sure the executives, the boards, all know that cybersecurity is a priority in the organization. We talked last time, right, that you want to retain those threat hunters and the cybersecurity professionals in your organization because of the challenges you're having with recruiting people and maintaining people. But let's talk a little bit maybe about process and technology areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think this process is critical, right? If you're looking at your organization possibly going into extended layoffs, or where you're actually looking at possibly freezing hiring, like we mentioned in the first episode, these all have to really be reinforced with good policies. So, for example, they should already be tightly coupled, meaning IT controls along with HR controls. As individuals are identified that they're going to be laid off, then obviously they need to be policies need to be in place where those credentials have to be monitored, and those accounts be monitored prior to them leaving, right? 30 days before, as much time as you possibly can to give sort of a monitoring. You want to prevent the sabotage insider as well, right? Into that on the way out, they're going to destroy something. But in any event, you want to be able to monitor your those that are getting laid off. And then when you look at from a process perspective, when you're doing a freezing, what are you doing? Making sure if you're going to freeze hiring of new employees, are you backfilling? You need to address the backfilling piece from a process piece as well. And so, the technology behind this is essentially more so not so much new technology, it's the integration of disparate systems, like I mentioned, HR and IT, and then obviously the cybersecurity teams need to be much more tightly coupled during these times, these challenging times.
Yeah, I think you hit upon one critical area is when people do leave the organization, whether it's voluntarily or whether it's through layoffs. those accounts that they have access to, you need to remove access immediately. The other area that a lot of people don't realize is shared accounts. There's a lot of companies that have shared accounts among multiple employees, and when one leaves, again, that can open up opportunity for somebody outside getting in if that account isn't turned off and eliminated. So, but yeah, I think between people, process, and technology, great opportunity to look at that right now. And it's been a really good discussion. And for folks, if you didn't see our first episode on this, I'd highly recommend taking a look at that. As we talked about, that was more on the business side. We talked a little bit about the criminals this side. Ed, great discussion today. Appreciate it.
No, likewise, always.
Yeah, and so thanks everybody for attending episode 11 on Trend Talks BizSec. We'll be back another 2 weeks in another episode to talk about another topic. So everybody have a great day, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.